Hey folks, I've been sitting around thinking about the times that I had psychic phenomena happen in my life. When at first I thought about this idea of talking about this, I really didn't think I'd remember very many episodes that I had that were significant. But I have maybe two or three that stood out in my head that were, this is pretty weird, this is a bit different than what normally happens in my life. And the next thing I'd like to talk about, that this might be, again, sort of like psychic phenomena, but it's sort of hard to define, Is it psychic or isn't it? The first one is a dream. Well, both are dreams, actually. But this first one is a dream about a friend of mine, Mark. And how this happened is Mark had been a friend of mine for years. He had lost his job. I hired him in the other store, and he was working there for a while, and I had to let him go. Nothing to do with him. I was just going broke. I was going bankrupt at the time. And we were... it was just a few weeks past that, and a friend of mine comes in, another friend, and he tells me that Mark has died. And I find out that he had done some drugs, and he had overdosed, and he had died right there on the spot. They went and partied, and somehow he did too much of something, and he overdosed, and he died. So a few nights later, I have this dream, and it's unlike regular dreams. My dreams don't really remain in my head very much, but I have some that have stayed, and the very vivid dream, vivid, clear, detail-oriented, lots of detail. And so in this dream, I find myself, I'm in an apartment, and it's badly renovated. The walls are bare. There's no drywall on them. There's just Latin plaster, but the plaster's fallen off. It's just a lats or something. And there's a living room over there, or some room at the past. Yeah, maybe a bedroom. I'm not sure. But the room I go in is this room right here. I just come in like this, and I'm standing in this room, and Mark is there, and he's not looking well. His face is pasty white, and sweaty. He's got sweat coming down his face, and he's looking at me, and instantly I felt like I was awake in my dream, like I was conscious, and I knew this was Mark. This was Mark. He's right there in front of me. And he's dead, and I realize he's lost. He doesn't know where he is. So I said, Mark, do you know where you are? And he looks at me, but he doesn't answer. He never says a word. But he reaches down, and there's a pair of pliers, just a regular pair of pliers, and a pair of needle nose pliers there. It's like being worked on, this apartment. And he grabs me by the arms right here. He pinches me with here, and he pinches me here. And he's got me like this. And we suddenly started doing this frenetic dance in a circle. And I woke up. And I sat up in bed and sat on the side of the bed, and I was feeling really disturbed. And I had woken up with this distinct feeling that he was dead. He didn't know he was dead, and he was lost. He's still lost in this drug. He's still not conscious that he's died. And somehow in my dream, he's reached out to me to try to something familiar, a connection with someone. But he couldn't connect with me, not clearly. And my wife had woken up behind me when I sat up, and she said, "What's wrong?" And I explained to her this dream, and then lay back down. And went back to sleep, to be woken up a short while later by my wife, who tells me that she had this incredible dream, very similar to mine, where she was at a party, there was a pile of people, but Mark was there. And he approached, and again, he didn't look well. He looked pasty, and he approached her and he gave her a hug, but he kept hugging her tighter and tighter and tighter. And that's when she woke up. And both of them have this element of similarity. Now you could sort of say, well, maybe my wife dreamt that dream after I told her about mine, and she was sort of affected by that. But I tend to think more that it was Mark. And I think that he was lost. And the reason he was doing it, he was not trying to pinch me with the pliers. He was trying to hold on to me. I was alive, and he was trying to see if I was there. And I think that he was doing the same thing with my wife. He was holding on to her. A very odd dream indeed. You have the feeling that there was something really going on there. So this next dream sequence about that I've got is very strange, because it impacted my whole life. I was in my 30s, about 30, 35, and I had a series of dreams. Now you might say it's good drugs or something like that, but anyways, let me go through the dreams generally speaking. The first dream was just about me becoming aware in my dream, conscious in my dream, and then doing some flying, just jumping up, and I can fly. But then I had a series of other dreams, and the next dream was I was in Ottawa. I was with two friends, and I was telling them, look, you can fly. I'll tell you how. It's easy. And I'd jump up. And that's what I remember about that second dream. The third dream, I'm actually realizing that this is something I can really do in real life. And I've recognized, I've accepted that it's something I can do, and I'm about to practice it. And I'm standing by a little creek. In my dream, it feels like this creek is up the road north of our house. I feel like I know exactly where it is, even though I had never seen this creek in my life before. So I'm standing at the edge, and I jump forward over the water, because of course if I can't fly, I'm going to fall into the water and not hurt myself. And I jump forward and I close my eyes, and nothing happens. I don't hit the water. So I open my eyes and I see I'm above the water, and I'm floating along like this. I'm just floating. And so I look at, and then I go, oh my God, I'm flying. And that thought just breaks the concentration, and I just fall, and I fall into the water. Then I have another dream. The next dream is there's a huge building, a barn of some sort next to some lake, and I know there's a bomb in it, and the bomb is up on top, and the only way to get to it is I have to fly up there and get it. And that's what I do. I fly up and I get it, and I wake up. And then the final dream I have, now these are not all in the same night, night after night I have these sequence of dreams, right? One dream every night, very vivid, very clear, always about flying, the same type of flying. And it's telling me stuff about how to do this flying. And it's not telling me this is something you can do while you're asleep. It's something you can do while you're awake. Literally fly up into the air. And then the final dream, I'm in a giant room. And it's filled with all the people in the world. And it's immensely high. And I have to... My task is I have to float up to the top of the ceiling, fly up to the ceiling, or the place will blow up and everybody will be killed. Bombs, eh? What can I say? I can't explain it. Must be how my brain works. So I try to get up. I don't know how. I can't do it, and boom, the place blows up, everybody got past. And then suddenly it starts again, the same place. Everybody in the world's there. I got to fly up the bomb. And, I'm trying, manage to get my feet off the ground, float up a little bit, boom, everybody dies. Suddenly back on it again. And I start over and over again, each time sort of managing to get a little higher, a little better in the time I've got. And finally I have this one dream where I'm doing it. I get up there and I reach the top, and then I wake up. And this whole sequence of repeats has been in my and you know, I felt frustrated when I woke up, because I thought, well, maybe I'll get to see what happens, but I wake up when I reach the top, you know. I don't, and I realized this was something you'd call a rote. And there was an author, oh man, Robert Monroe, who had written about these rotes. He said these were lessons that you were taught. So it's like somebody was teaching. You get these lessons while you were sleeping in these dreams. And these are these rotes, these repeating routines, these repeating sequences that would try to teach you some basic lesson. And until you learnt that lesson, you would not wake up. You would just repeat that rote. And that's what had happened to me, except that this one was about flying. And it was telling me something about, there was a spot, if you went like this and you just pull a line between my two fingers and another line here, there's a spot in your head that you got to visualize as frozen over. You got to freeze it over, separate it, isolate it in your mind from the rest of your body, and then you can fly. And it implies that the rules, the material rules that exist in here, gravity included, they only work, they only apply to you because of some type of an agreement. It sounds like utter nonsense. But these dreams were so impactful and so consistent in their technique of explaining how it worked, that it affected my understanding of the world, of how things worked, and I developed some theories about how the things worked, and I wrote some books about it. And to this day, these books still affect my life in a variety of ways about what the world is all about, and my questions about the world, and about myself in the world, blah, 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 right? So very impactful series of dreams. And then I've got the final story about psychic phenomena in my life. These were all these minor little things growing up, maybe in impact and whatnot. But this last one is just incredible. And interestingly enough, I wasn't in center stage. I was on the side of this situation. I really wasn't involved in there. But my brother was, my mother and my father were. So let me go into it. My mother's friend, Adele, called to my parents and said that they had to come down from BC. And so they came down. It seemed urgent, important, and I wasn't involved in this at all. It was Adele calling my mom and saying, come on down. My mom and my dad went to visit her. And I met my mom and my dad right after. They came to my house after they had visited Adele. And both were in a state of utter shock. My mom was crying. She was just crying. She couldn't, and it wasn't a cry of sadness or anything. She was just overwhelmed emotionally. She could not relate or deal with what she'd seen except by just crying. And my father, on the other hand, was mute. He couldn't say a word. He couldn't trust himself to talk. And what they had witnessed was, my friend Adele had become suddenly psychic. No explanation. Suddenly she was psychic. And she had spirits around her to whom she could talk. And there's a plenty of them. And she would allow them to take over her body and do things. And my parents witnessed Adele do a series of yoga moves that were in the hands of adepts, highly trained adepts, things. And Adele was never known, she was somewhat clumsy as a person and wasn't known for being able to do any type of thing like that. She had no training in that. And just witnessing these incredible events had them affected the way they were when they came to see me. My father, I particularly remember, had always refuted any type of spiritual phenomena. And that marked a moment in his life where he changed. He became, I won't say an ardent believer, but certainly a believer. And he experienced what I call the crack in the cosmic egg, not my term, but the crack in the cosmic egg. His understanding of the universe broke that day, and he had to adapt to it. So very powerful impact. At the time, Adele, my mom had asked her about me, and Adele had made 2 predictions about me. One, she had predicted that my baby would be born male. I would have a son. And that's, like when you get right down to it, isn't that a 50-50 chance? Like it's not anything really miraculous if it happens. It's neat, impressive, really. But what does it mean? Is it proof positive that they're spiritual phenomena? Not really. But she also said something about I would sell my house by the end of June. And that was a really weird thing, like I was at the point where in my life where I really needed to sell the house. We were moving and we had bought another house, and this one had to go. Whatever it is that we had a situation, that house had to sell. It just had to sell. And in fact, if it didn't sell by the end of June, I was done for. And here she is telling me it's going to sell by the end of June. So I thought, oh, well, thank God, So by middle of June, nothing's happened, right? Nothing. No calls, no nothing. And I'm tearing my hair out. I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do. And then I thought about a fellow I knew who had lent me some money for my business. And I thought, hey, maybe I could use the money he lent me for the business as a down payment on the house, and he'd want to buy the house. He had expressed an interest in buying it at some point, so I'll go see him. So I go see him, and he says, yeah, I wouldn't mind buying it. I think that would work. We look at the dollars and everything like that, and we sign on the dotted line on June 29th, the end of June. And we were able to move forward. And I was pretty impressed, because the Adele prediction proved to be right. But in the end, was it right? Was it because I had that prediction in my hands and nothing was happening, that I pushed myself and contacted the fellow I knew, and we got a deal made and we sold the house? Or was it her prediction, or the fact that I knew about her prediction? Like it gets murky. But still a pretty impressive situation. But then, I have to take a sort of a sidestep and talk about an author called Colin Wilson, who wrote books about possession and poltergeists. And he talked about, he gave cases. In his books, he wouldn't just, talk about what he believed. He would do investigations of actual phenomena, actual cases that had happened. And he had the whole story. And he would make up a theory that would explain these events. And he had these very weird beliefs. For example, he thought that schizophrenics hear these voices. And he had this belief that these voices that they heard weren't actually just in their heads, but they were actually a spiritual connection that they were having with the other side. And that on the other side, there weren't just nice voices. There were lower order voices and higher order voices that these schizophrenics hear. And in fact, he relates that with schizophrenics, they say you meet one, you've met them all. They all display the same type of things. And they'll have these lower order voices. And the lower order voices are nasty. They pull stunts. They play with you. Their aim is not to be helpful. But the higher order voices, their aim is to be helpful. And there are, Colin Wilson in his book recounts situations where the higher order voices are having conversations with the psychologist through the patient, the schizophrenic, who does not understand what the conversation is about. He's just relating the words that he's hearing to the psychologist, who's then replying to those words. And so how could the schizophrenic have a conversation that he did not understand? It sort of implies these spirits might be real then. These are real spirits, not just in their heads. Anyways, let me tell you, I'm not talking about anything I believe in here, just what the Colin Wilson had related. And Another thing that Colin Wilson talked about was possession of spirits that would invade your life. And he cited a case where some woman, or some guy, not a woman, a guy had done some Ouija board. And he'd had some person contact, or some person giving him some information that proved to be accurate. Predictions and information. But after doing the Ouija board, these voices stayed with him. And they kept making these predictions. And these predictions were coming true. And he built up some confidence in this voice, telling him these things. And, he was able to predict all sorts of things for friends and family, people around him. People got to know that if you had something you needed explained, he would be able to do it. And so he had a great belief. And at some point, and this is a lower order voice doing this, these predictions apparently are like simple stuff for them. And then they prepare the person for the whopper, a great big lie, that because you've had all these little things that were true, you believe that this great big lie is going to be true, and then you go out to the world and pronounce yourself, this great big thing is going to happen, and it doesn't happen, and it destroys you, your family, your relationship with people, and stuff like that, causes you unbelievable trouble in your life. So what happened with Adele, I know this sounds like, with Adele, is exactly the same thing. That's what blows me away. She went on to BC, and in BC, my brother was there, and my parents were there, and they would visit Adele every now and then. And when they visited her, they would come back feeling crazily drained. It was like being with her was so intense, these spirits, these whatnot, constantly jumping in and out of her body. And she then got this prediction, and she called my brother, and she was trying to get him to go along with her. And the prediction was that Jesus Christ was going to return. He was coming back to life, and he was going to return on a specific island near Vancouver at a specific time. And it did not happen. And that is the event that happened with Adele. And for me, looking at it from the sidelines and seeing it from having read the Colin Wilson book with this description that is identical to that, it left me remarkably marked. I'm affected by that situation. I had been thinking when I first started talking, wanting to talk about these, whether or not I'd had spiritual events in my life and what they were, that I didn't have very much, and I really do have a lot. And my questions about the world these days are sort of this balance between matter and energy. And energy, you could sort of interpret that as spiritual phenomenon to a certain degree. So which one is real? And it's almost, if there's only matter, there's no spiritual. But the reality is that matter is energy and energy is matter. They're almost interchangeable. They are interchangeable. So, anyways, I'm still floating in the middle and trying to come up with my own answers. But I thought you might find it interesting to listen to my own little spiritual adventures. And if you have any to relate, I'd be glad to read about them. But thanks for listening to my memories. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care.